Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cleo's Corner. On today's episode, we're digging deeper into the theme of human environment interaction. No big surprise here, we live on the planet Earth, and we in turn use the environment around us into resources that make our life easier. Some of those resources will renew themselves as long as we're careful not to abuse or overuse them. Other resources can only be used once and are gone. How we manage our resources and how we choose to use them is an important part of being a geographer. By the end of this video, you should be able to identify a renewable and non-renewable resource, understand the advantages and disadvantages of using both types of resources, and draw conclusions about how we use and manage resources. So let's say I had a garden. The soil gives nutrients to the plant, and the plant grows food. The parts of the garden work together to create something. Now, I am not part of the garden. I am an outside influence. I add water and I take food out of the garden. If I did not maintain the garden, it would become overgrown and the system would fail. This is what we would call an open system. Outside influences, me, can add or subtract materials. One time I had this neat kind of clear glass ball. It was hollow and sealed. On the inside of the ball was about a cup of water, some algae, bacteria, and two small shrimp. All the ball needed was access to light. Beyond that, the different parts worked together to maintain the system. I could not add water or food. I could not affect the shrimp in any way. This is what you would call a closed system. The Earth is a closed system. We only have the resources we have. We only have the air that we currently have. We've never added or subtracted substantial amounts of materials from our planet. We have never gone out into space to find more materials, mine minerals, bring them back to Earth. For all practical purposes, the resources that we have today are the same as the resources that existed on the planet since its formation. There is no great cosmic hand that is adding water or air or minerals to Earth. Outside of our atmosphere is the vacuum of space. Never mind how people used resources in the past. The amount of remaining resources is also not entirely important. What is important is that what we have now, today, must last us not for our lifetime, but for the lifetime of every human for as long as we want humanity to exist. So even while it feels like we might be living in abundance now, we are using resources that will only make it harder for our children, grandchildren, and descendants to be able to find and use in the future. So, how we live today and how we manage our resources will affect the quality of life of all people on our planet for all time. So, we can divide our Earth's resources into two major groups, renewable and non renewable. First things first, all products are made with natural resources. From clothes to furniture to machines and building materials, everything is created from materials found in nature. Some natural materials can be pretty much used immediately without needing to be processed. An apple, for example, can be picked straight from the tree and consumed. We call those kinds of materials primary resources. The basic materials we use to make other things. Now, if you picked some apples and processed them and combined them with other materials, you could make an apple pie. Apple pie is also a resource, but it needed to be created into a finished project, making it what we call a secondary resource. In the end, we use our planet's materials and resources to make our lives easier and more comfortable. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Every animal on Earth has adapted to fit their environment and survive. Some animals are fast or strong or have sharp teeth. Some can fly or swim fast or have armor to protect them. Humans are kind of weak and squishy and somewhat slow and don't have any great defensive capabilities. What we do have is a brain like no other animal on the planet. We have, like no other animal, the ability to manipulate our environment, and we can make materials into something else to help us do what we want to do. We use our resources for energy and the meeting of our needs. Now, renewable resources can be replaced over time. There are two major types of renewables: living resources and earth cycles. These resources will never run out as long as we manage them and do not overuse them. Earth cycles are systems created by the earth and sun. Wind, water, solar, geothermal, they exist because the planet exists. And we can pollute our water resources, but if we run out of solar or geothermal power, we have bigger problems than just not being able to turn on lights. Living resources are exactly what they sound like. Timber, food crops, and slaughter animals are examples of living resources. So, as long as we do not drive a specific plant or animal to the point of extinction, those resources will continue to exist and reproduce so that we can continue harvesting them. Non renewables, on the other hand, cannot be replaced in a timely manner. Metals, minerals, natural gas, oil, coal, they're all examples of non renewable resources. We only have the amount of those materials as we have in we only have the amount of those materials as we have. And in the case of minerals and metals, we're not going to get any more. In the case of coal, oil, and natural gas, I suppose we would eventually get more, but it'll take about 60 million years or so. So let's conserve what we have, right? We use these resources for lots of different things. We nourish ourselves with resources. We use natural resources for entertainment. We build our homes and belongings with both renewable and non renewable resources. Most of those items will have long and productive lives. Some resources are better suited to be used in different ways. No one is suggesting that we build a house out of coal or sit down to a wholesome breakfast of raw petroleum. Obviously, those needs are best met by using living resources like wood and eggs. But typically, when we talk about um, if it's better to use renewable or non-renewable resources, what we're really talking about is it better to use those resources to generate energy? And the problem with energy is that once you use it, it's gone. Now, I can use a resource like a tree to create a piece of furniture, and I can pass that furniture down for generations. Yes, the tree is gone, but it will still continue to be useful for a very long time. And that's not entirely true with energy. If you burn, let's say, one unit of oil to create energy, and then you use that energy to power something, once that power is used up, you can't get it back and you can't get the oil back. They're gone. They're consumed. So, natural gas and oil and coal are often called fossil fuels because they were created by plant and animal matter that had been compressed and heated deep in the crust of our planet. The nice thing about fossil fuels is that they generate a lot of energy. Burning fossil fuels converts the resource into heat and energy very efficiently. We have relied on this very easy source of energy for most of human history. Our planet is wired to use fossil fuels. However, you can only find fossil fuels in certain areas. There are entire nations that have no fossil fuels that they can use, or they're too poor to access the fossil fuels. They're also limited. Once you burn it and it's gone, that means that the resource that what that means is that the resources are becoming even more scarce. Scarcity is the idea that there's not enough of a resource for everyone to have all that they want. This means that getting access to the fossil fuels makes some people and countries incredibly rich while making other nations incredibly poor, just so that they can have access to this basic resource. Access to fossil fuels has led to conflict as it becomes more scarce and people more desperate to control it and maintain their ways of life. And lastly, when you burn fossil fuels, some of the carbon it is made out of is wasted. It turns to pollution and it adds to climate change. While it's easy to use and very efficient, fossil fuels have many limitations. Renewable resources have their own set of advantages and disadvantages. Most importantly, you can find various renewable resources in nearly every part of the world. The sun shines everywhere. Um, um, Wind blows pretty much all over, and most places have access to water. If all of that fails, then, well, the earth is still hot below our feet. So, in every place, you find at least one of those earth processes. Sometimes renewable resources are what we call green technology because they cause less pollution and are equally distributed across the globe. Turning water currents into energy is what we call hydropower. Solar panels are used to capture the energy of the sun. Biomass is another emerging technology that uses the energy stored in plants. Hydrogen and nuclear energy are kind of two oddballs. They use elements that would fit better into the non renewable category, except that hydrogen is so abundant and it renews itself. And nuclear, even though it's a mineral, creates a cleanish energy for a much longer time than traditional non renewable fuels. However, just because green technologies are equally distributed still doesn't mean that they're easy to access. These are emerging technologies that are very expensive to put into practice. The infrastructure of our planet would need to be essentially rewired, which is also extremely expensive. Green technology also tends to create energy less efficiently than fossil fuels. If the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing, then energy is not being produced. It can be done, however, and even if it can be done, even a small nation can become largely energy independent. So, just to wrap up, there are legitimate uses for both non renewable and renewable resources. You wouldn't build a car out of wood any more than you would bake a pie out of steel. If humans are good stewards of the planet and we use non renewable resources sparingly and only for reasons that cannot be done using renewables, then we will be able to sustain our planet. If we can convert what we can to renewable resources, we'll even be making our planet healthier and less polluted and possibly less violent. It will still take innovative ideas to find a sustainable balance between using different types of resources. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on Cleo's Corner.